So I have with us today Dr. Jeff Dillon, who's a superintendent in Wilder School District in Idaho. Debbie Fisher, who's the assistant superintendent, curriculum instruction and assessment from Albany County School District number 1. And we've heard from a lot of her fabulous people. And then also, again, Dr. Sherawn Reberry, from who's the principal from Virtual Schoolhouse, West Ada School District in Idaho. So let's have a great, robust conversation. I'm just going to start you guys off with making sure I can see you all because my videos are not all showing at once. Okay, I see you, Debbie. Hi. Want to make sure I can hear you. Okay, good. I can hear you. Sherawn, where are you? There you are. I can hear you. And I see Jeff. Okay, great. All right. So cool. So we have been having a robust conversation, and we're wrapping up now 2 days of talking about logistics and what it's like to have living in a mutation of space and time, and also a mutation of the execution of the actual learning content, right? Like through a system, is the teacher creating it all, and then distributing it back and forth and having all this back and forth communication. Are you leaning on adaptive digital courseware? It's been a pretty robust conversation. So I'm going to start with you, Dr. Dillon, and have you kind of share kind of where you're at right now dealing with these really big questions of time and space logistics. You know, are you open yet? You know, are kids coming back? Is normal never coming back? Are you going to always have remote kids? And then also, how are you using systems? That was a lot. So that
was like, you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you. Good to have you.
So we definitely had a chance to reflect after last spring, and with the demographics of the students we serve, it does not help not having them on campus. So our reopening plan was about getting kids back on campus, and we did whatever we could to make it happen. And we supported the staff, making sure it was safe for staff and students to do that. Making sure parents had the opportunity to voice their choice of sending kids back on campus or learning virtually. We opened the school a couple of days after we thought we were going to, but was pretty close in the same time frame. We had 20% of our parents that chose to keep their kids at home, and 80% said send them to school. So we had to create that flexible environment. So we had the opportunity to hire the appropriate staff, move some staff around, get the appropriate supervision in place to make sure we're supporting every single student in the district, whether they're on campus or off campus. So I think our plan worked out really, really well for students. But I think what made it successful was the fact that we have implemented technology a long time ago, and we embedded that social emotional soft skill development as a priority with technology. We knew that technology wasn't the savior of education. It was going to be a tool that we needed for education. And so the goal was to really create the student that could use a device to learn with, as a tool, to empower them to be engaged, to empower them to move forward in content, empower them to ask questions and when to ask questions. And so that was the foundation of the technology used for our students. So when our kids were at home and learning from home, they knew how to ask questions. They knew when to ask questions, when was appropriate. And so we put that learning in the hands of the student, and it wasn't a guessing game for our staff. We knew when students needed help because they were coming to us. And it created a great learning environment for all of our students, kindergarten through 12th grade that were online. So in short, that's kind of how we opened, and the use of technology and how we're using systems for student success.
This is awesome.
In addition to that, the platform, the playlist for Students for Learning is really in the hands of the student. We've taught kids how to have a voice and a choice for learning when they were on campus. So when they went off campus, that continued. So students had the voice. This online platform worked for me, and so I'm going to continue down that pathway. Other students needed, more hands-on or that project-based approach, and that was their pathway. They could continue down that pathway. There were kids that needed the paper and pencil, and so we created those opportunities for students as well. So listening to the student was as important as preparing teachers on how to communicate back and forth.
Good, good. So lots of shift there, though. Lots of shift.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, structured shift. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. All right. All right. So coming over to you, Demi, same sort of general question. We've listened to a lot of the people from Albany County School District today. Everyone stepped up. Very proud of all of you. But what are you seeing now in sort of that space and time shift? Is normal coming back? And then what do you see as the future of the content and systems arena for you?
Well, that is the question, isn't it? Wondering what next year will look like and if we'll be back, fully or not. Hopeful that we will be back fully. Our goal is to be back in the buildings after spring break, which is the middle of March. But we still have that group of parents, much like Dr. Dillon mentioned. We have about probably 20% of our parents that have chosen to be full-time virtual due to health reasons or just it worked better for their students. So I'm sure we'll keep that 20% that won't be in school. Our shift, though, is really to try to get everyone back in the building if we can. But I think we will always have some type of virtual option open, whether it be that we open some type of virtual academy for those kids that found this really was the thing that worked for them, or we do some kind of hybrid of what we did this year. I think when you think about how it's going to affect us, a lot of our elementary kiddos have already started to transition back into the buildings. So we have a couple grade levels, for instance, one of our schools, I think, only has 3 kids now out on virtual because we have the space to social distance and make that work. But then at our middle school, where the space is the huge issue due to the age of the building, it's going to be a little more difficult to figure out how we get every kid back in the building because the classrooms are small, the hallways are very condensed. They don't have a flow at all. There's like a dead end. So we're really going to have to look at that. And we've actually thought of providing some online courses at the school where you have a teacher that's teaching in the classroom, but you have kids that maybe in different parts of the building that are zooming into that classroom for instruction. So trying to figure the logistics out, I think, is going to be interesting. And then our high school, it's a relatively new school, very large, beautiful building. And so they should have no problem transitioning back. It's just going to be interesting to see how many students actually want to transition back and how many students really found success doing it online, the virtual method. We also have some teachers that will not ever want to do virtual again. They really enjoy being in their classroom with their students. And we have those teachers that have really found a love for teaching virtually. And so I think just trying to figure out how that all comes together is going to be probably my next task as I move into the spring and we start to think about next year.
Yeah, and I'm betting that we need to have a separate conversation, Debbie, with you about Lammersville ISD, California. They are going to speak next week on their region's event because they even had to go past the duopoly of virtual versus physical and have a blend in between so that you can still be on the football team. You still have to come in for the science lab hands-on, the arts lab hands-on. Some stuff you have to be on campus once a week, but then you're virtual. And then, sort of, it's like we're in this new sort of space-time continuum change. There's no more only this rail or that rail. It's a blend, and it's hard on you as an administrator. It's super hard on you.
I really see us going in that way, is trying to come up with a blended method that works, because there are just certain classes our students want to take that are very difficult virtually, like concert choir or industrial art or automotive. Those are things you really want the kids in the building. And so, but there may be other classes that would be fine to be done virtually. So I have a feeling we'll be looking at that. So I look forward to that conversation.
Yeah, we'll have to make sure we send you an invite to here Lammersville because they made Edu Jedi Knight status this year with the Learning Council. So they're like at the pinnacle of altering space and time. Um, Sherawn, I want to say we've already heard a lot from what you're doing. So I want to take it a little bit further with you and just say, what's your speculation about what you've learned so far about the alteration of space and time? Because, it's not like teachers have to be always on. It's good. The togetherness is good. But what about what you see in the future is having tech take some of the load off of all that traffic? What do you think?
Well, first of all, I always explain to my teachers too that the tech piece is not replacing them. The tech is just that tool that's there to help them and make them better teachers, essentially, or help them in that learning. But they are always the key to the learning because they're the ones building relationships, working with the kids, and getting those families connected as well. I honestly think as we move forward, just like Debbie said, and I think Jeff did too, that we're always going to have students that want to be in the virtual world for one reason or another. COVID pushed the limits, but we are finding that we actually have an enrollment, and we are PK-12 of over 3,000 students. On Monday, because we start our second semester, we're going to be adding at least 300 new students to our enrollment. Again, I'm not sure that that's really because of COVID right now, because of, the masks and things. It could be because more and more it's opening up and more students are coming to school. I don't know. I also know that our parents enjoy that control over the learning. And I don't mean that in the sense of like control, but they know that with the virtual learning, it's always going to be there. With the hybrid method, it's sometimes hard for some kids. We talked earlier about, the SEL and some of that, those social emotional pieces. So I think that control over the learning helps them too with that time, that space, that continuum. It also helps teachers. I mentioned earlier, my teachers, I think Debbie, you just said something about this as well. The teachers that have come to the virtual schoolhouse, I can tell 99% of those teachers are going to want to stay virtual. They are after me almost daily. Do we know next year? Do we know what it looks like? They don't want to go back either, because I had a second grade teacher tell me, I have been able to do more with my students in 50 minutes than I can do in a face-to-face classroom in 90. So I think it just opens up a new way for learning, specifically for those kids who can do well. And I mentioned it earlier, but the flexibility piece too. We have families that travel. We have students that are on sports teams or other things, or parents travel for work, so students can go with them. As I mentioned, we have a student in Egypt right now. We have one in Afghanistan. We have one in Iraq. And then we have one in the Carolinas, one in Oregon. I mean, all over the place. So it just meets some of those needs. And I think that time space continuum, it's going to continue meeting and just grow to be able to do that.
That's amazing. So you're already at that level we showed yesterday in terms of the future of logistics of being what we call extraliminal, using people beyond the normal limits of your own geography. And we're seeing that happen a lot with the smaller school districts, smaller states. You can't get a science teacher, so you borrow 3 districts away or another state away for half time, and you do the shared services model. That's been happening in corporate America for like a bajillion years now. That's a mild, exaggeration, but it's now coming home to roost in education because of this mutation. So I want to go to 2 other points, and I want to start first with the sudden involvement of parents as like a fifth column now, right, to what we do as leaders. And what are your visions, and what do you hope from capturing that now and using it more? I want to start with that question first, and I'm coming back to you, Dr. Dillon.
That if I had, crystal ball and seeing our parents struggled working from home. And I'm really, really fortunate that our students have the capacity and the empowerment to learn individually, personalized, and it can drive most of that work. it was very evident when the parent was absent from the educational framework of the student, because those students could drift off and were allowed to drift off. And so we had to learn how to work differently with parents individually, I think, than we've ever had before. And really provide them the walk in the house, let's sit down, let's show you how to do this approach. And we've never quite been that deep into helping our parents out, but that's what we've learned to do. And we've also learned that there's an expectation learning from home. And our parents had this grandiose idea, oh, my kids can learn from home. I'll let them stay home because they can watch the baby sister that's 6 months old and I don't have to do it all day. So we had our elementary kids that were watching their baby siblings because the parents went off to work. And so we had to get back in there and say, no, this is not just a babysitter now. It's in the house. Your students are learning. So it created a unique situation for us to be able to support our parents differently, but also keep those high expectations for learning in place. And, it's amazing. Most of our parents got on the same page with us, and they are now helping their children in a different capacity than they ever have before. They're more engaged with the teacher. They're asking more questions with the teacher and the learning. They want to know more from their student, how their students progressing. So it's really changed the dynamic of parent engagement.
Yeah, and I think that could be a blessing or a curse depending on how you handle it, right? Yeah, that's going to be like, we could have 3-hour conversation about that alone. Like, what does this mean for the future? When everybody's looking over our shoulder constantly, is this a good thing? Yeah. If we make every parent responsible more, that's probably positive. So Debbie, same question to you. What are your thoughts on that particular topic?
Oh, I had to giggle a little bit about Dr. Dillon because I think we've had the same thing. We've had, the parents that thought, oh, this is great. Now I don't have to pay for daycare. My kids can just be home all day and watch the kids and they'll still learn. And so there is a lot of learning for parents because they just didn't realize. I've actually had parents call that have said, I didn't realize this was going to take all day. Thinking, well, what do you think we do all day? But it's been, I agree with Dr. Dillon. The parents were the big ones that just didn't know. They were calling us, asking us, how do you turn this computer on? I don't even know how do you get to that Google thing you're talking about? So it was a lot of educating the parents. So really, it felt like the first probably 3 to 4 weeks, we were really triaging parents. Kids knew what to do. They knew how to get on the computers and how to navigate because a lot of them had done that in the classroom. But especially our younger elementary, kids, the parents, we really had to work on just tech savvy. Let's just get you up and running and figure that out. And then from there, my team was just being stretched pretty thin, to be helping the teachers and the virtual teachers. And so I took on the parent piece. And I meet with the parents every Thursday via Zoom. And we're going through a book study called the Distance Learning Playbook by John Hattie. And it's for parents. So Distance Learning Playbook for parents. And we've slowly walked through. So the second chapter took us 2 months because we only read like 5 pages. And then they come on Thursday and I give them examples of how you might do writing or how you might do reading or how you might use a math manipulative to help with that concept. I've had to bring in a few guest speakers as we've gotten more into the algebra realms and those chemistry realms. I bring in some of our teachers to help give some ideas to parents of how they can support and help that. And now we're in the SEL part of the book, the students' well-being. And so bringing in specialists that can help them, navigate how to deal with a frustrated kid, how to deal with a student that is decided they just can't do it. And so they won't do it. They just are shutting down. So we're really having to do a lot of extra support for parents. But in some ways, I've actually really enjoyed it because as you move further away from the classroom, you get further away from the kids and the parents. So it's really given me a chance to get back to what I love, which is teaching, and to really work with those parents. So I look forward to eventually, I'm thinking in the future, somehow kind of kind of making a model of maybe where we can get parents in the building and we can do more of these, like, here's how to help students with this issue, here's how to help them with that issue, how to look at test scores and know what that means exactly. I really look forward to having them become more of a partner with us and really helping them along this journey. It's been interesting because those parents that attend every Thursday night are just very devoted and they're trying so hard. And they don't know how to be a teacher. And so it's been a really fun partnership. And I hope that we can figure out a way to continue that in the future. But like you said, it's interesting to have somebody constantly knowing what you're doing, to watch your teachers and go, well, the teacher said this or did this, and that didn't seem right. And so, that's a little bit tricky too, of, having them invited right into the classroom at times. But I think there's some real power in that. And I'm looking forward to sort of investigating that further and maybe coming up with some kind of a parent academy that we can really work with parents and team together.
Yeah, like some sort of parent boot camp. I love it. I love these ideas. And I think there's so much depth to this conversation because this is happening all across America. Okay, so Sherawn, what are your thoughts on this topic?
Well, both Dr. Dillon and Debbie, they have mentioned some things that we have dealt with as well. I would begin by mentioning, and I talked about this earlier, but we have implemented what we call a parent university. And so that parent university is a live event for our secondary students at the beginning of each quarter, where parents log in. We show them how to use Teams. We show them our learning management system and Fuel Ed, which is where we get most of our curriculum, and how to navigate, how to connect with the teachers, how to help their students with learning. We also did it the first semester for our elementary parents as well. And parents were just very happy about it. We archive it, we put it on our website, and they mentioned that they go back and forth and watch it over and over again. So that's really good. I think a lot of our parents, actually, now that we've gotten started and we're in this, feel a little more connected. We too have had to deal with the kids who are watching younger siblings, or we have high school kids who go off to work. So we've tried to make virtual schoolhouse as flexible as possible, where all the live lessons are recorded, they're archived. If students don't attend live and they watch the archive, there are accountability methods that we have in place, like an exit ticket or a form that they have to fill out, something so that the teachers know that they have paid attention, have done the live lesson, in addition to the work that they are assigned to do. We have also learned that we have partnered with daycares. We have also partnered with neighborhood co-ops. So students in a neighborhood co-op, they go to one house, we work with them, students know their schedules, same thing with the daycare. And it has seemed to work really well. I think this also goes back to your question earlier about the time and space and how it all connects and what it's going to look like. And it's truly evolving. I would say it's almost evolving daily, sometimes hourly within a day, depending on what we've learned and found out that day. But I really do think it's, again, going back to relationships. It's not just about those relationships with kids. It's about the relationships with the parents and the families as well, and making it work for them and their situation.
Yeah, and that's the attitude that we're going to see happen more and more in traditional public education, of that, oh, we're living in a competitive landscape now and we're losing kids and they're disenrolling. Or like a lot of the Texas schools and even some of the ones in Arizona had said a little bit like you said, Dr. Dillon, they're losing kids. They're like literally disenrolling because they're older kids and their parents were trying to find work or were out working and they had to babysit, right? So literally there's just so many complications to this issue about, like, sort of where this is all going and how you're going to have to deliver. Mm-hmm. It's not going to be normal anymore. So I want to go a little bit further with that, and something that I touched on earlier, and it's a delicate thing to bring up, because, Learning Counsel talks a lot about what's happening in the software model architecture of the change pattern we see, particularly at the more advanced districts who've been doing this for a long time. And they're getting like really sophisticated, and we're in constant conversations with state governments about architecting new plans and stuff like that. And Dr. Dillon, I think you and Sherawn were with us in Idaho when we played the Twister game. I don't know if you remember this. We brought that big board up to Idaho, and everybody had a role, and you were moving independently in terms of the thing. So what I'm going to say is that the delicate thing is that there's now software that will be the execution of the learning content in a modularized way. It's called Adaptive Digital Courseware. I'm sure you guys know about it. There's a lot of resistance in the teacher community to using it. And here's what I would have to say about that. They think that they're going to get replaced and that they need to be the source of all the content, like the pieces all put together. The issue that I have with that is that I don't see a lot of leaders saying, listen, I need you to use this kind of stuff. I'm not trying to just be a proponent of it. I have a reason for this. Because I want more of your attention on these two things, social emotional leadership and catching up the kids that aren't making it. And if you're only focused on whole group learning and you're not leaning more on high-tech answers to things, not just tools, but the things that actually do the work a little bit more, then what's going to happen is we can't compete because we're going to leave kids behind and they're going to leave. Because the leaving right now is at epic proportions. So this is kind of a delicate thing to talk about because it sounds to your mind like this stuff is a replacement for my teaching. No, it's refinement of your teaching. So that's what I'm hoping more leaders start talking about and looking at. Am I confusing you? But I just want to turn it over to you and have you answer if you think you understood what I just said. So. Jeff, over to you.
Okay. Yes, I understood what you were saying. The balance of giving up the teacher in the classroom to an adaptive program that does all the work. I think that most of us in education leadership really have a fundamental belief that teachers teach kids, programs don't.
Okay, but I want to give a caveat to that. So, for example, like Accelerate Learning, a lot of the other adaptive curricular, it's providing you like math lessons and you're learning all this stuff along, and then it diverges and forces the auto intersection of the teacher. Okay, so it's not teacherless.
Yeah.
Okay, so
yes.
But it's still not being used at the level maybe that it should be because of that thinking, right? So go ahead.
So we've used some of those programs in the past. We felt that was going to be a good tool for moving kids. But they were still clunky at the time. That was probably 3 years ago. So it was still, I think, early in the stages. So we leaned upon those programs early to allow our teachers to build our own content because we personalize learning for every single student. We don't have grade levels. We don't have traditional bell schedules. We don't have any bells at all. To move kids around. So it's about the individual student. So it's not about the type of software that can move a student along. It's about having a continuum of learning with standards, and the students can weave in and out of those with their choice of learning pathway. It could be, like an online pathway, like I said before. It could be, more instructional from the teachers. So our teachers have small group instructional times with students, and then they go off and do their work. So it really is about the individual student approach, not about a one size fits all. We can all do this. Whether it's an adaptive program or a non-adaptive program, when it's one size fits all, I've never seen it work for every kid. And so it's about personalization for us.
Yeah, I love that viewpoint. And that's exactly what I'm hoping is happening all across America as we all evolve right now, is that we come to the recognition that there is no one size fits all. And that's beautiful. Okay, Debbie, what are your thoughts?
I would probably echo a lot of what Dr. Dillon said. I really would hesitate for like that type of a program just because our teachers have put in a tremendous amount of hours to identify essential learnings and to develop, a program that works for kids. We're very fortunate we do have an I&E time and an intervention and enrichment time. So kids that maybe are struggling can have that extra time with the teacher to pick it up, or they can kind of fluidly flow back into, I don't want to say a credit recovery, but they can go into a course where they've missed a certain essential and they can pick that up without missing a beat to still be in their math class. So if they're in Algebra 2, but they missed one specific essential or skill, they can be in Algebra 2, but then float into a recovery class for that skill. Once they've demonstrated proficiency in the skill, they go, they're now done with that class until they have another struggle point. So I think that our teachers are just really in tune to that. And I would really almost hate to see a program that took that individualization away, because we also do a lot of accelerating in our district. We live in the university town where University of Wyoming is, and we also have LCCC, which is a community college. So we have, I would say, close to 20% of our students that are dual enrolled in the university or LCCC. And so I feel like we meet a lot of very diverse needs. And I think that our teachers have done a really incredible job of like identifying essentials. Because last August when we came in and we said, look, we're not expecting you to make up the last 10 weeks and then do this entire year as well. So let's go back and look at what are the essentials that maybe you didn't get taught last March or April, May. How do those fit into your scope and sequence this year? What are those things that you love to do but maybe aren't the essentials, so we can get rid of those for a while till we get kids back on track. And so I think that I would probably be hesitant to promote like a certain program like Dr. Dillon said, where it's one size fits all. I really think it's very individualized, and I would hate to take that out of a teacher's hands. I'm fortunate. I'm in California actually right now visiting my grandkids because my son and my daughter teach out here, and they haven't even opened school here. So this morning I spent time just being a listener in my high school daughter's class. I was just watching and really impressed with the engagement and how she, a student came in and right away my daughter-in-law was like, "What's going on? How are you? You don't seem right today." Like, so I think just not having those moments where you can really connect with kids, I would hate to see that not be a part of it. And I may have misunderstood the program, but that's kind of my thoughts as I was listening to Dr. Dillon.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is beautiful. And, I'm just, while you were talking, I was thinking to myself, like what it was like when I was in high school. And I'm sure you guys, we're older people on this call today. If you remember back, like we were all just treated monolithically, like, to even have the conversation anywhere now, right? Everyone's saying we're trying to personalize, we're being adaptive to the degree that we can. So even just having that, Debbie, I think is a beautiful thing. I think what I'm saying, and I'm going to turn back then to Sherawn, is that what we're trying to actually envision is where is the medium point between the technology doing some auto distribution, auto cohorting into individualized groups and things like that, and the distribution of the knowledge in an automatic way, and never losing the intersection with the human, like elevate the humanity to take more work off of them. Anyway, so that's really what I'm looking at, is how do you do that? Because most school districts have been telling us teachers are overwhelmed. There's too much work on the teacher, blah, 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 blah. So that's kind of what I'm like grabbing onto, is how can we make technology actually work for the teacher rather than the teacher having so much traffic? Because I don't think we really know how much more attention could be had on true personalization, on true connection. And we didn't really have that when we were kids, because we were like nodes in the machine moving through bureaucracy, right? But now we have an unlimited dream, right? We have we want perfection and we're going to get it. So, so Sherawn, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think I'm in agreement with both Jeff and Debbie there. It honestly is not about the program. It really is about those relationships and building that. And then with those relationships, then the teachers are understanding those students and where they need to be using those technological tools. Doesn't matter which program it is. The teachers are still knowing their students. The teachers are still helping to build the paths, even if the program will take them along the way. Teachers are still checking in. Teachers are still doing the teaching, making it work. And they're also doing that balance to make sure that our students are meeting those priority standards.
Yeah.
In addition, I think we need to talk too that for us at Virtual Schoolhouse, it's not just about those teachers either. We have counselors who are playing an immense role right now too with our students and with our parents, really. Helping students at the elementary level, helping them at the secondary level, doing some, helping get students into credit recovery, finding resources for families, because just because they're virtual, their other needs don't go away either. So it really is a huge balance between what tools are we using, how are we using those tools, the connectivity, the relationships, and the balancing of all of that all together.
Yeah.
So it's no wonder our teachers are tired.
Yeah, they're all tired. Everybody's worn out. Yeah. So I think what I'm zeroing in on is there some other dimension of the utility of software doing some more heavy lifting to even further elevate the humanity of the teachers? And are we, in other words, look under the hood, see how much work they're doing. And my reality right now, and maybe it's not with you three, but a lot of the other districts we've been talking to this whole year, we've had like 20,000 people on webinars this year, is that teachers are overwhelmed. In fact, we completed a survey 2 days ago. 74%, if my memory serves me right, of the respondents said teachers are overwhelmed or burnt out. So that's my worry. I'm trying to band-aid that by just bringing up this conversation. How can we do this? I mean, there's probably a million ways to skin this cat, right? But so let's maybe like give our final thoughts on that, and then just sort of wrap up with where are you going? What's next for you in terms of your own leadership for the rest of this year and then into the next? Dr. Dillon, you go first.
So, trying to frame this question or answer the question.
Yeah.
I think it's our responsibility as building leaders, district leaders, to make sure that we've always kept and are keeping the health of our teachers in the forefront of our thinking. Because there's a lot of things we can put on their plates that can overwhelm them. And sometimes it's the little things that can overwhelm the teachers. And so even during the time, pandemic time, we're forcing, in our building, everybody's wearing masks and distancing, and we move differently throughout the building, and et cetera. We've had to spend time making sure our teachers, have the support they need, continue to be successful and be there for their kids during the day. I think that sometimes technology can overwhelm teachers versus take something off their plate. When we provide a tool for teachers, we have to really consider, is this going to add to or take away that load? And what load are we moving around? Because there's still a lot of work to be done. And so the tools are important for our teachers to have, but it's the appropriate tools that are most important. So they can be successful, know their job is important, know there's going to be a lot of work, know there's going to be a ton of support from the administration to get the job done. So there's a lot of components in play there, but I think it's don't overwhelm the teachers, because if they're overwhelmed, the students are going to be overwhelmed and learning is not going to take place. And so there's a fine line of the tools and success for teachers and students. So moving forward, we're going to continue with our model that we have in place. We're always going to have now a virtual component to the Wilder School District. We have found, based upon what we learned last spring and throughout the school year, we have a large percentage of our kids, probably 10 to 15% of our kids, are more successful online than on campus. So we will continue that model to make sure those kids are supported moving forward. So I appreciate the opportunity, and I just want to say hi to Sherawn out there. We haven't seen each other for a while. It's nice to see you again.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So Debbie, over to you.
I would like to say, like Sherawn Dr. Dillon, both. I agree with everything you're saying. And I think the tool is important, but we want to make sure it's a tool that's actually helpful and easy to use. And there's a purpose for the tool. It's not just we're going to use tech because it's tech. We want to have a purpose that we feel that will be better for teachers and also, authentically engage our students. Moving forward, I anticipate we will always have some type of a virtual presence now. And I like what you said, Leilani, about, that blended model, some type of blended program. We're really fortunate. I have such an incredible PD team that works so hard to learn all these things and get out there and teach teachers. Our high school facilitator, Mike McManaman, and I believe he did one of your sessions today.
Yeah, he was with us this morning. Him and his team, they were awesome.
Yeah, he is incredible. And unfortunately, he thinks he's going to retire this year, although I'm trying to convince him, go with me a few more. Let's do a couple more.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping if he does retire, I'll be able to bring him back as some type of like a virtual specialist that can maybe help kind of deep dive into tools. What are those best practices and help teachers really become experts at it, but also really only look at the tools that are going to be really useful and beneficial to what we want to do. So I don't exactly know what the future holds in the next few months, but I do think we will definitely have some type of virtual presence in our schools from this day forward. I think last March really convinced us we needed to do that. We were able to go one-to-one with our students. So we made a tremendous financial commitment. And so I think we will continue in that realm. And then just continuing to learn and grow and figure out those best strategies for how do you engage kids authentically, because that has been our biggest dilemma is the engagement. The kids that are normally engaged in a classroom, your AP kids, your honors kids, those high achievers, they tend to be very engaged online as well. But then those kids that were hard to engage in school are very hard to engage outside of school as well. And we've done a lot of learning. We've brought in a professor from CSU, Dr. Leanne Kaiser, who specializes in engaging online instruction. And we've had her come in 3 or 4 times to help our teachers and try to figure it out. And so I think that the future would just be the continued PD and trying to make sure that we're doing the best we can do for our students and our staff. Because like you said, our staff is tired. A lot of them are working with students in the day, planning for a virtual day and doing a full-time virtual students on a Friday. And it's a lot. So trying to figure out a better schedule for all of that.
Yeah. That's kind of what I'm working on. Just so stay tuned because I'm all about cracking this nut. Okay. I love the comment about the learners that learn here also learn other ways. But here's another thing that's also happened is that a lot of districts told us this year along the way of all these webinars with all these superintendents and everybody, they had learners wake up online that used to be sit in the back with their hoodie up, quiet, never involved when they were physically in school. And all of a sudden they're chatty Cathy on the, it's like, what happened? So I think we're also getting some of that, which is cool. Yeah.
We also had one of was a teacher told me 8th grade. She had him in 7th grade science last year. She said he slept through the class most of the time, had parent conversations constantly trying to get this kid. And this year, virtually, he's like an A student, rocking it out. Incredible. So there are those things that you're just like, okay, what did we do differently?
What happened? I know. Awesome. Okay, so wrapping it up, Sherawn.
Yeah, I think I agree with everything that everyone is talking about here. And I do have a daughter who is a 2nd grade teacher, and she yesterday called me at the end of the day almost in tears because she is just so overwhelmed because she's got kids virtually, and then she's got kids the next day partially hybrid, partial virtual, and then switches kids the next day. And it is hard on our teachers, and my heart just goes out for them. So that leads me to say that I really think as much as we talk about SEL, that social emotional learning, it's not just for our students anymore. It's for our staff, our teachers, our counselors, everyone involved. We have got to be checking in with everyone all the time. The funny thing is, when I first started this, I did interviews with, when I first started Virtual Schoolhouse, we interviewed teachers and it was all online, so I could see their face. I knew how they were. And then when I started handing out supplies to teachers so they could come get their computer or things like that, they were wearing their masks. And it was so hard because I couldn't make that connection, because the person who had their hair up now had their hair down, but they had a mask on, and somebody was wearing a hat, and it's such a different world we're living in right now to recognize people and be that way. I think it also goes back to that consistency. I talked about it in my presentation earlier today, but just that consistency for families and for our teachers. Everyone needs that right now. It just helps along the way. And the other thing that I found pretty interesting, I think, Debbie, you used the word overwhelmed. We find that we are having to balance the teachers who are overwhelmed, but with those teachers or staff, not just teachers, but staff in general, who are overwhelming. So you've got the overwhelmed and you've got the overwhelming. And how does that all work together with everything? And again, it does go back to being authentic, engaging. I mean, how do we do all of that? PD will never go away. It's all about that pedagogy. And just because you're in the virtual world, pedagogy doesn't change. Good teaching is good teaching, regardless, wherever you are, whatever you're doing. And I know that Virtual Schoolhouse will always be the option in West Ada School District now for families to have that virtual option. And so, Jeff, just back at you, it is nice to see you. We haven't been face to face for almost a year now, and maybe we'll have a game of golf again soon.
That'd be great.
Yeah. Yeah. And when we come back to town, we won't be bringing the Twister game, because we will not be allowed anybody to be that close again. I mean, not that we actually did Twister, but we were within inches of each other even when we were doing that game. Yeah, so I'm really excited for all of you guys and your viewpoint and your enthusiasm. And I want you to understand, as leaders, you were pillars. You're holding up the roof right now. And so this is my saying thank you for doing that. And you'll see us out here as Learning Council continuing to push the envelope of thought leadership. Like, where's this going? What's happening? What are the statistics? Who's doing what? Why are kids disenrolling? Let's, get this all fixed. And so, we'll be back. And loved meeting all the people from Wyoming, Debbie. Your team is awesome. Give them all like virtual hugs like this. Hug virtually. That's what we have to do right now. But, here's the other thing is America is still standing. We're surviving this together. And we'll all have war stories to tell the grandchildren. But, it's all good. Kids are learning in America. They're learning something. And this is good. So let's just keep doing that. So I want to thank you guys, Jeff, for being with us today. Debbie, Sherawn, you guys rock.
Nice to meet you, Debbie.
Yeah, thank you. And Sherawn, I have a daughter that's a second grade teacher as well. And yeah, what a time to be a teacher, right?
Yes.
But thank you so much for having us, our whole team. I am blessed to work with the best team around. So thank you so much for allowing us this privilege and opportunity. We appreciate it.
Yeah, it's really good to have all of you guys. I'm going to give a last shout out to our sponsors that are also valiantly leading the way on their own: Safari, Identity Automation, Lightspeed, Achieve 3000, ClassLink, Scholastic Digital, and No Story. And then just tell all of you, thank you. Thank you from the Learning Council. Someday we'll get to see you live in person again. We're looking forward to that. In the meantime, we're virtual on-air presences, and we care about all of you deeply, and we want to keep delivering you value. So if you ever think of anything you want us to do, let us know. But again, thanks for being with us, and we'll see you next time when we roll around to do your states. Okay, bye everyone.